He was a Navy SEAL who had vanished into the wilderness to escape the ghosts of war. But deep in the forest, through mist and rain, he found a horror no battlefield had prepared him for. A brunette female police officer and her loyal K9, buried beneath branches and mud, breaths faint but still there. Beside them lay a crumpled piece of paper, its rain-smeared words scrawled in haste. Stay out or die next. Before the story begins, share where you're tuning in from. And if it touches your heart, remember to subscribe. Rain swallowed the forest as Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, moved through it, his breath steady, boots whispering over slick ground. He had spent years where silence meant survival, but this quiet felt different, alive, watching. The storm rolled low over the mountains, turning the air into mist. He'd come to check his traps, but his flashlight caught a glint beneath a fallen cedar. He crouched and brushed away mud, then froze. It wasn't metal or cloth. It was a hand, pale, trembling. The old instincts roared back. He dug fast, careful, until a woman's face emerged through the dirt, a brunette female police officer, mid-20s, mud streaked across her skin, her eyes half open and unfocused. Her chest moved shallowly. Beside her lay a German shepherd, matted with mud, one paw twitching weakly. He cleared the branches, freed their bodies. The woman's lips moved. Her pulse fluttered under his fingers. The dog gave a low whine, still guarding her, even at the edge of death. Rope burns ringed her wrists. A gash split her temple. Bruises darkened her throat. The animal's ribs heaved unevenly. Jax pulled a knife from his belt and sliced through the ropes. When the last thread fell, she gasped as though surfacing from deep water. Her eyes, bright, startling blue, met his. "You're safe," he murmured. "Don't move." The German shepherd tried to rise, failed. "Easy, boy," Jax said. "You did good." Then he saw it, a crumpled piece of paper near her shoulder, soaked and stuck to the mud. He peeled it open. Thick black ink bled through the page. "Stay out or die next." His jaw tightened, not random, a message. He scanned the trees, still, too still. Someone might still be watching. He pocketed the note and lifted the woman into his arms. She was light, limp against his chest, her uniform cold and soaked. "Hang on," he muttered. He turned back, scooped up the dog, and started through the storm. The trail to his cabin was barely visible, but he moved with practiced precision, his strength unbroken. The woman's breaths came short and shaky, her body trembling. By the time the cabin appeared through the mist, his shoulders burned. He kicked open the door and carried them both inside, laying the German shepherd near the fire and the woman on the couch. The flames were dying, so he fed the hearth until orange light filled the room. Her face softened in the glow, young, dirt-streaked, beautiful in a fierce, defiant way. He checked her ribs, cleaned the gash with warm water. She flinched, and he murmured calm reassurance. The German shepherd growled faintly, protective even now. "She's safe," Jax said softly. "I'm helping her." The woman stirred. Her voice came rough, faint. "Where am I?" "Safe," he said. "My cabin. I found you in the woods." Her eyes flicked to the fire, then the dog. "My partner." "Alive," Jax said. "Hurting, but alive." She blinked, tears cutting through the grime. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. "You're still in danger." He nodded toward the damp paper drying on the mantel. "Whoever left that didn't expect you to live." Her gaze fixed on it, fear flashing in her eyes. "They'll come back," she whispered. "They always come back." Jax crouched beside her. "Then we'll be ready." She tried to speak again, but exhaustion dragged her under. He stayed there a moment, watching her breathe, then covered her with a blanket. Too young, too brave, too broken by something she never should have faced. He stood, staring out the rain-streaked window. The storm had faded, but the silence left behind felt heavier, charged. Somewhere beyond the tree line, someone was still out there waiting. Whatever peace he had come here to find was gone. The war had followed him into the woods. He moved to the corner of the room, pulling a weathered case from beneath the floorboards. Inside lay the pieces of his past, a suppressed rifle, wrapped in oiled cloth, a combat knife, and a faded patch from his unit. He hadn't touched them in years. His hands hovered over the weapons, the weight of memory pressing down like a storm that never truly ended. The dog stirred at the sound, watching him with wary eyes. "It's all right," Jax murmured. "Not for them, for her." He closed the case, setting it on the table beside the fire. The forest creaked beyond the walls, branches dripping, wind shifting, as if the night itself were listening. Somewhere, far off, a twig snapped. Soft, deliberate, not the sound of rain or wind. Jax's head turned. He reached for the rifle without a word. The next breath of air felt colder, thicker. The woman stirred again on the couch, sensing the shift. Her hand brushed the edge of her badge, the metal faintly glinting in the firelight. The dog's ears lifted, muscles tightening. Another sound followed, the crunch of footsteps on wet leaves, slow and deliberate, circling the cabin. Jax moved to the window, the barrel of the rifle angled low, but ready. The mist outside glowed silver under the moon, movement barely visible between the trees. He waited, breath silent, eyes fixed on the darkness. A shadow passed, tall and sure of its place, pausing just beyond the light. Whoever it was, they weren't lost. They were hunting. The seconds stretched thin. The shadow moved closer, its outline shifting through the fog. Jax could make out the shape of a man in tactical gear, a faint red glow blinking from a headset. Professional. Trained. He watched as the figure knelt, inspecting the muddy ground near the cabin's edge, fingers brushing over Jax's boot prints. The dog let out a low rumble, teeth bared in silence. Jax steadied his breathing. One intruder meant more nearby. He flicked the safety off his rifle, eyes narrowing. The intruder lifted a small radio, whispering something Jax couldn't hear, then turned his head toward the window. Their eyes met for half a heartbeat through the mist, soldier to soldier. Jax felt the jolt of recognition in that split second. Whoever these men were, they weren't random killers. They were organized. And they had just realized he was alive. Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, stayed frozen by the window, eyes locked on the movement beyond the tree line. The rain had eased into a whisper, leaving behind the sound of dripping leaves and the steady rhythm of his own breathing. The man outside, the one wearing tactical gear, didn't belong to any local force, that much was clear. He moved like someone trained, deliberate, low to the ground, scanning patterns rather than scenery. Whoever he wasn't alone. Jax could feel it in the way the forest seemed to breathe differently, branches shifting where they shouldn't, the faint shuffle of boots masked by wet leaves. He glanced at the couch where the brunette female police officer lay sleeping, her face slack with exhaustion, and then at the German shepherd curled beside the fire, its ears alert even in rest. He couldn't risk a firefight here, not with her half-conscious and the dog still too injured to run. The cabin walls wouldn't hold against automatic fire for long. Moving silently, he crossed to the small desk near the door and grabbed a handheld radio from his old gear, scanning through static until he caught faint chatter, encrypted, low frequency, professional. He could make out pieces, perimeter, confirmation, extraction. That last word made his jaw tighten. They were planning to take someone or something out of here. He set the radio down and reached for his rifle, checking the chamber and suppressor before slipping into the shadows by the door. The figure outside shifted again, raising a hand to his ear, muttering something into his mic. Jax's finger rested lightly on the trigger, but he didn't shoot, not yet. A rifle flash in the woods would only tell the others where he was. Instead, he waited, steady as stone, letting the seconds crawl. The intruder moved along the cabin's edge, close enough that Jax could hear the faint hiss of his breath. When the man stepped under the window, a faint glow, Jax saw his face for the first time, a scarred male with a trimmed beard and pale eyes, mid-30s, the kind of look that told of mercenary work and too many quiet kills. The man paused, glancing toward the light spilling from the fire inside. His hand reached for the latch of the back door. Jax moved before the sound could come. The door swung open an inch before his hand shot out, seizing the man's wrist, twisting hard. A muffled grunt broke through the night. Jax yanked him inside, slammed the door shut, and pinned him against the wall. The rifle clattered to the floor. For a heartbeat, the man's eyes widened, realizing too late who had him. Jax's voice came low, controlled. "Who sent you?" The man struggled, tried to drive a knee up, but Jax countered easily, pressing an elbow into his throat. "You've got 3 seconds," he said. The mercenary's lips curled into a faint smile, despite the pressure on his windpipe. "You shouldn't have picked her up." Jax's hand tightened. "No, say that again." The man's voice rasped between clenched teeth. "You should have left her buried." A sudden click echoed in the silence. Jax looked down just in time to see the small detonator clutched in the man's other hand. His reflexes saved him. He wrenched the man's arm up, slammed it against the wall, and the device went off with a deafening pop. Not an explosion, but a flash grenade. White light and sound filled the room like a hammer. The dog barked, the woman gasped awake, and Jax was thrown backward into the table. The mercenary dove for the window, crashing through the glass and vanishing into the fog. Ears ringing, Jax forced himself upright. The brunette police officer was sitting up now, blinking wildly, disoriented. "What was that?" she croaked. "Trouble," Jax answered, scanning the doorway. The German shepherd growled, teeth bared, hackles raised. Outside, movement rippled through the mist. Multiple shapes this time, 3, maybe 4, advancing with weapons drawn. "How many?" she asked, her voice trembling but steady enough to stand. "Enough to make this messy," he said. "Can you shoot?" Her hand went to her hip out of instinct, but her holster was empty. "My weapon's gone." "Then stay low and keep your partner close." He grabbed a second rifle from the rack near the stairs and tossed it to her. "You remember how to handle one of these?" She gave a shaky nod. "I've been trained." "Good," he said, "because we're not waiting for them to knock." He crouched near the window, eyes narrowing as figures began to emerge from the fog. Silhouettes with night optics, rifles raised, moving in formation. The woman took position near the couch, the firelight flickering across her face, determination cutting through the fear. The dog crawled closer to her, growling deep in its chest. The first round shattered the front window. Jax ducked, returning a controlled burst toward the flash. A man fell in the tree line, his rifle clattering into the mud. Another moved to flank, only to meet Jax's second shot. Silence, then more footsteps shifting. They were testing him, seeing how many defenders there were. The woman slid across the floor, grabbed a small pistol from the dropped mercenary's holster, and covered the side door. "There's more of them," she said. "They'll circle around." "Not if they don't walk back out," Jax replied. He reached for a lantern, turned it low and tossed it through the broken window. It landed in the mud, glowing faintly. A decoy. 2 muzzle flashes sparked immediately, hitting the light dead on. Jax took both shooters out before the sound even faded. The forest went quiet again. Then came a voice from the darkness, calm and cutting. "You should have stayed gone, Seal." Jax froze. He knew that voice. It came from a man named Kane Mercer, a blond male in his late 30s, a mercenary commander he'd once crossed paths with in Kandahar. Jax felt the old chill crawl up his spine. "Mercer," he muttered under his breath. "You're a long way from Afghanistan." The response came like a smirk made of words. "And you're a long way from retirement." The fog swallowed his laughter. Jax exhaled slowly, steadied his aim toward the sound, and whispered, "Not long enough." Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, crouched near the shattered window, his pulse steady despite the tension flooding the cabin. The rain had thinned to a cold drizzle, but the fog clung thickly to the pines outside, shifting with every breath of wind. He could still hear Kane Mercer, the blond mercenary commander in his late 30s, moving somewhere out there in the dark. Mercer wasn't a man who played games for long. If he'd spoken, it meant he was buying time, spreading his men into better positions. Jax knew that pattern all too well. He turned slightly toward the couch where the brunette female police officer lay, her body tense, one hand gripping the pistol he'd given her, the other resting protectively near the German shepherd. The animal's ears were pricked forward, a low growl rumbling in its chest, every muscle straining. Jax's voice was barely a whisper. "Stay low. Keep your eyes on that door." She nodded, her face pale, but her eyes sharp. "Who are they?" "Not your local criminals," Jax replied. "Ex-military, hired guns, and they don't miss twice." He shifted position, sweeping his gaze over the tree line again. The fog was moving differently now, disturbed by multiple figures circling, waiting for an angle. Mercer was orchestrating them like a chessboard. Jax needed to turn that control into chaos. He reached for a small tin box on the mantel, one of his old habits from deployment. Inside were flares, nails, and wire, improvised defenses. He started threading the wire between the door frame and a table leg, stretching it taut just above ankle height. The brunette police officer watched him, confusion flickering in her expression. "You're rigging traps?" "Not traps," he said softly. "Reminders. I'm not the only one who bleeds when they rush the door." The German shepherd gave a quiet huff and looked toward the window, eyes fixed on the trees. A faint beam of red light flickered briefly in the distance. Laser optics. They were sighting in. Jax dropped low, pulled the officer down with him, and a split second later, a burst of gunfire shattered the cabin wall. Wood splinters flew across the room, embedding in the couch and the floorboards. The fire flickered violently, nearly snuffed out by the shockwave. Jax rolled behind the counter, returning fire in controlled bursts, never wasting a round. The echoes bounced through the trees. He hit one target. The shape dropped instantly. Another moved behind the shed. Jax shouted over the noise. "They're not trying to kill us yet. They're trying to pin us." The officer's response was tight. "Why not just finish it?" "Because Mercer doesn't care about clean kills," Jax said. "He wants leverage." He fired again, clipping another attacker's arm. The man screamed and disappeared into the fog. Silence settled for half a breath. Then Mercer's voice came again, calm, mocking. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you, SEAL." Jax glanced toward the brunette police officer. Her face had gone rigid. "He's talking about me," she whispered. "They were after me, not my partner. I was working a case, corruption inside the department. I found names, accounts. It's all in my patrol truck's onboard drive. They couldn't risk me talking." Jax kept his eyes on the window. "So they buried you." "They wanted it to look like a disappearance," she said, her voice shaking. "Nobody was supposed to find me out here." Jax's gaze flicked to her badge glinting on the table, half buried under mud. "You picked the wrong forest to die in," he said. She gave a breath of something between a laugh and a sob. "Lucky me." The dog let out a short bark, tail stiff, muscles tense. Jax's head turned sharply toward the back of the cabin. He heard it too, the soft creak of the porch steps. Someone was on the back deck. He motioned silently, signaling for her to stay where she was. Then he slipped into the narrow hallway, rifle raised. The light back there was dim, the walls breathing faint shadows from the fire. He reached the rear door and waited. The handle moved slowly, careful, deliberate. Jax stepped back, flattened against the wall, and when the door eased open, he struck hard. His rifle butt caught the intruder across the jaw, sending him stumbling into the hallway. The man, a bearded male in his 30s wearing black tactical gear, swung wildly with a knife, catching Jax's sleeve but missing flesh. Jax slammed him into the wall, disarmed him, and drove his elbow into the man's throat. The body crumpled. Jax dragged him forward and shut the door again, but not before catching sight of two more figures moving through the trees. They were advancing fast. He turned back to the main room. "We've got more incoming," he called. The brunette police officer was crouched by the couch, gun steady, her hair falling across her face, her breaths sharp but controlled. The German shepherd was on its feet now, limping but determined, its eyes following every sound. "How many?" she asked. "3 left. Maybe more," Jack said. "Mercer won't rush it. He'll wait until I'm distracted." She gave him a look that was part exhaustion, part defiance. "Then we don't distract him, we bait him." Jax almost smiled. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "You shoot better than me," she said. "So I'll give him something to aim at." Before he could protest, she grabbed the fallen intruder's jacket, pulled it on over her torn uniform, and moved toward the far corner where the light from the fire threw long shadows on the wall. "When I move, they'll think I'm running for the side door," she said. "That's when you take the shot." Jax hesitated. "If you're wrong, they won't hesitate." "Neither will you," she said, her voice steady. She crouched, ready. Jax shifted to the opposite angle, sighting down the rifle toward the clearing. The fog outside pulsed with faint light. "Now," she whispered. She darted from cover, moving fast across the room. As expected, the muzzle flashes came instantly, 2 from the left, 1 from the front. Jax fired 3 times in rapid succession. One attacker dropped, another spun backward, shouting, the third dove behind a fallen log. The woman hit the floor hard, rolling behind the couch. The dog lunged forward, barking ferociously. Jax fired again, finishing the last visible silhouette. The echoes died out. Then came the silence again, the kind that wasn't peace, just the pause between storms. The brunette police officer lifted her head slightly. "Did we get them?" "Most," Jack said. "Not him." The name hung between them like smoke. Mercer. Somewhere in the fog, the blond mercenary commander was still there, watching. The forest felt alive with his presence, every shadow bending around it. Jax knew the man wouldn't retreat. He'd wait for the moment that cut deepest, the kind that came when defenses started to crack. Jax reloaded, keeping his tone calm. "We've bought time, not safety. Get some water. Patch that cut on your arm." The fire crackled faintly, the only sound in the room. The German shepherd lay beside the couch, eyes fixed on the window, every muscle taut. Outside, somewhere deep in the fog, Mercer spoke again, softly this time, almost amused. "You can't keep her, Thorne. She's already marked." Jax didn't answer. He just raised his rifle toward the darkness and waited. Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, stayed crouched by the window, eyes cutting through the fog as if trying to see through time itself. Every sense in him was alert, tuned to the rhythm of danger. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving only the creak of trees and the faint drip of water from the eaves. He knew that silence. It was the kind that came right before violence. Behind him, the brunette female police officer sat on the floor with her back against the couch, breathing slow, trying to steady herself. Her right sleeve was rolled up, revealing the scrape on her arm she'd barely noticed before. She was young, too young for the kind of chaos that had found her, but her eyes had the same steel Jax had seen in soldiers who refused to fold. The German shepherd lifted its head beside her, a soft rumble rolling from its throat as if to remind the world that it still had fight left in it. "He's not gone," Jax murmured, his voice barely audible. "He's waiting for something." The police officer glanced at him. "What does he want?" Jax adjusted the rifle, scanning the clearing again. "Control. Mercer never shoots without knowing where it'll hurt most." He turned from the window, checked the bolt, and nodded toward the back wall. "We can't stay here. This cabin's a coffin once they regroup." She frowned. "Then where do we go? It's nothing but forest out there." "There's a ranger outpost 2 clicks east," Jack said. "Old, but still standing. It has line of sight over the valley. From there, we can call for help." "And between here and there?" she asked. "Between here and there," he said quietly, "is him." She looked at the German shepherd, running her hand down its neck. "Can he make it?" "He'll make it," Jack said. "He has to." The dog's tail thumped once, as if in answer. Jax grabbed his pack from the corner and began loading essentials: ammo, water, first aid, the radio. Every motion was deliberate. He'd done this too many times before, leaving behind comfort for the unknown. He glanced toward the mantel, where the crumpled note still lay half-dried. The ink had blurred more now, but the threat was still clear enough to feel. Stay out, or die next. He folded it once and slipped it into his pocket. The police officer watched him. "You think that was meant for me?" "Maybe," Jack said, "but now it's meant for both of us." Outside, the fog shifted again. A faint glint of light blinked once in the trees, a signal, deliberate and controlled. Jax moved quickly, killing the fire with a heavy boot of sand from the bucket beside the hearth. Darkness swallowed the room, leaving only the faint glow of embers. "Move," he whispered. The police officer stood, her legs still unsteady but determined. She slipped her arm under the dog's collar to help it walk. Jax opened the back door slowly, his rifle angled low. The air outside was colder, dense with mist. He scanned the tree line, then motioned for them to follow. They moved in silence, boots sinking into soft earth. The only sound the faint pant of the injured German shepherd. The forest swallowed them whole within seconds. They kept to the low ground, following a narrow path barely visible through the fog. Jax's instincts guided him more than his eyes, years of reading terrain, feeling danger in the way wind carried sound. After 10 minutes, he raised a hand, signaling them to stop. The police officer froze, her breath catching. Jax tilted his head, listening. Voices, faint, filtered through trees, moving parallel to their position. Mercer's men. They were sweeping the woods in a line, trying to flush them out. "Down," Jax whispered. They crouched behind a fallen log, the German shepherd curling tight against them, its breathing soft. The voices grew clearer, footsteps crunching closer. "You sure they came this way?" one asked, his tone casual but tense. "Thermal says movement," another replied. "Could be animals, could be them." Jax glanced at the woman beside him. She nodded once, gripping the pistol tight. He could see the pulse in her throat, fast but steady. The patrol passed within 30 feet. The first man's boot brushed against the edge of the log. Jax's finger hovered on the trigger, but he didn't move. One mistake, one sound, and they'd be surrounded. The men lingered, scanning their surroundings, then moved on, voices fading into the mist. Jax exhaled silently. "We keep moving," he whispered. The woman nodded, helping the German shepherd back up. They traveled another half-mile before the trees began to thin. Through the fog, a faint outline appeared, a narrow bridge spanning a ravine, old but still standing. Beyond it, Jax could just make out the shadowed rise where the ranger outpost stood. "That's our way across," he said. "Stay close." They stepped onto the bridge, the wooden boards creaking under their weight. Halfway across, the dog stopped suddenly, growling deep in its chest. Jax froze. The air shifted. Then, from the opposite end of the bridge, a shape emerged from the fog. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the ease of someone who had done this dance too many times. Kane Mercer, the blond mercenary commander, stepped into view, his rifle slung casually across his chest. His smile was calm, almost polite. "You always were predictable, Thorne." Jax raised his weapon slightly, eyes narrowing. "You should have stayed dead, Mercer." "You first," Mercer said. He lifted his hand, signaling to the darkness behind him. More shapes appeared, 2, 3, maybe 4, rifles trained on the bridge. The police officer's breath hitched. Jax didn't look back. "On my mark," he said quietly. "Run." "You'll be trapped," she whispered. "Just go." Mercer's voice cut through the air. "You can walk away, Thorne. Hand her over, and this ends clean." Jax gave a low, humorless laugh. "You think I believe that?" Mercer tilted his head. "You, of all people, should. You've been on my side before." Jax's grip tightened. "That was a long time ago." Mercer shrugged. And yet here we are again. He took a step forward, boots thudding against the wood. The bridge groaned under the weight. You can't save everyone, Thorne. You never could. Jax's eyes flicked to the German shepherd, whose muscles coiled like a spring. He counted the distance in his head. 5 seconds of cover, enough for her to clear the bridge. Maybe. Go! He shouted. The woman grabbed the dog's collar and ran. The moment her boots hit the planks, Jax opened fire. Bullets tore through the fog. Mercer's men dove for cover, returning fire, splintering the railings. The woman sprinted, the dog at her side, while Jax held his ground, moving with deadly precision. One down, then another. Mercer fired back, bullets snapping past Jax's shoulder. The bridge shuddered. A round struck one of the support cables, sending a jolt through the wood. "Keep going," Jax roared. The police officer reached the far end, dragging the dog behind her. She turned, shouting something he couldn't hear over the gunfire. Then the bridge gave a long, low crack. Mercer smiled through the haze. "Guess you're out of road, brother." Jax met his eyes. "I've been worse off." He grabbed a flare from his belt, struck it against the railing, and tossed it into the river below. The red light vanished into the mist. Then fire erupted from the waterline as a buried fuel cache ignited. The explosion tore through the bridge, swallowing the night in flame. The explosion tore through the bridge like thunder given form, hurling splinters, flame, and smoke into the night. The shockwave rippled through the ravine, sending a rain of embers into the fog. Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, was thrown back onto the collapsing planks, his rifle skidding from his grip. The heat bit into his face, but he clung to the cables, teeth gritted, muscles screaming as the world burned around him. Across the gorge, the brunette female police officer and the German shepherd stood frozen, eyes wide as the firelight painted everything in shades of red and ash. Jax's voice broke through the roar, rough and commanding. "Run! Get clear!" She hesitated, torn between instinct and the desperate urge to go back. The bridge was gone. Half of it hung twisted and burning over the chasm, swaying dangerously. Mercer's men were silhouettes in the smoke now, some on fire, others scrambling for cover. Jax reached up, hauling himself toward what remained of the bridge's spine. His hands found steel, his boots slipping on wet timber. He moved with the precision of a man who had faced death too many times to flinch from it. Behind him, Kane Mercer, the blond mercenary commander, pulled himself from the dirt, face streaked with soot, fury burning in his pale eyes. "You think that'll stop me?" he shouted. Jax didn't answer. He was already climbing, each movement measured and brutal. The flames ate through the last of the support beams. The bridge began to tilt, groaning under its own weight. Jax reached the edge just as the entire structure gave way. He lunged, grabbing the jagged railing, his boots finding purchase on the last slat, before the rest of it dropped into the inferno below. The blast of heat rose up, forcing him to close his eyes for a moment. He could hear the bridge collapsing into the river, the echo rolling through the canyon like distant artillery. He pulled himself over the edge, coughing, chest heaving, every muscle trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. The brunette police officer was there, mud-smeared and trembling, reaching for him. She caught his wrist, digging her heels into the soil, helping him drag himself onto solid ground. The German shepherd barked once, a deep guttural sound that broke the silence. Jax rolled onto his back, staring up at the smoke-streaked sky, his breath coming in sharp bursts. The woman leaned over him, her voice shaking. "You're insane." He managed to half-smile through the soot. "I've been called worse. You could have died." "Wasn't the plan," he said, pushing himself up. He looked across the ravine, where flames still danced in the mist. The other side was chaos, fire, debris, no movement. But Jax knew better than to assume Mercer was gone. He turned to the police officer. "We need to move. That blast won't stop him for long." "You think he survived that?" she asked, disbelief and fear mixing in her tone. "I know him," Jax said quietly. "He doesn't die easy." They moved quickly through the forest, the path rough and uneven, branches clawing at their clothes. The German shepherd kept pace beside them, limping but relentless, ears swiveling with every distant sound. The forest had turned ghostly in the aftermath, fog swirling through drifting sparks, the smell of burned wood clinging to the air. The woman stumbled once, catching herself on a tree. Jack steadied her, his hand warm on her shoulder. "You holding up?" he asked. "Barely," she admitted, "but I'll manage." "You're doing better than most," he said. "You didn't freeze." She let out a shaky breath. "Freezing gets you killed." "That's exactly right." They pressed on until the ground began to rise, the trees thinning into a ridge overlooking the valley. Jack spotted what looked like a silhouette of the ranger outpost, half hidden among the trees, faint light glinting from its weathered windows. Relief flickered across his face, but it was short-lived. The wind carried something else to him, a sound he'd learned to recognize in the worst places on Earth. A helicopter, faint, distant, but approaching fast. "We've got company," he muttered. The police officer looked up, eyes narrowing. "Mercer's? Has to be." Jax dropped his pack and scanned the tree line. "They're coming in to extract him. That means he's alive." "What do we do?" she asked. "We get there before they do," Jack said, nodding toward the outpost. "Once we're inside, we can lock it down, use the comms to call for help." They started moving again, faster this time. The sound of rotor blades grew louder, cutting through the fog like a blade. The German shepherd barked once, then ran ahead, nose to the ground, guiding them through the brush. The outpost came into view, a 2-story structure of weathered logs, dark against the rising glow of dawn. Jax pushed open the door and swept the interior with his rifle. Empty. Dust motes hung in the light from cracked windows. Maps lined one wall. A rusted radio console sat silent in the corner. "We can make this work," Jack said. The police officer followed him in, setting the dog down gently on an old blanket she found near the door. "How long until they're here?" she asked. "Minutes, maybe less." Jax crossed to the window, watching the treetops sway. "When that chopper lands, they'll sweep the area. We'll have one chance to catch them off guard." "You want to fight them again?" she said, disbelief edging into her voice. "You got a better idea?" he asked. "We can't outrun them. Mercer won't stop until he's got you." She looked down, hands trembling slightly. "You keep saying that." "Why me? What's so important about what I found?" Jax met her eyes. "Whatever you found must have hit someone powerful. Mercer's not doing this for money. He's doing it to bury the truth." She swallowed hard. "Then we can't let him win." The dog let out a low growl, eyes fixed on the window. The helicopter's shadow passed over the treetops, wind howling against the glass. Jax stepped to the console, flipping the main power switch. The old radio crackled to life, static filling the room. "Can you reach anyone?" she asked. "Maybe," he said, twisting the dial, "if the frequency still holds." Static turned to faint voices, fragmented military channels. "This is Thorne," he said into the mic. "We need immediate support. Hostile mercenary unit inbound. Coordinates—" A burst of interference drowned him out. Then a voice answered, distorted but clear enough to freeze him. "Well now," the voice said, "you really don't know when to quit." Jax's jaw clenched. "Mercer." The police officer's eyes widened. "He's on the line?" "He's jamming the signal," Jax said. "He's close." The radio hissed again, and Mercer's voice came one last time. "You can hide in the woods all you want, brother. I'm coming to finish this myself." Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, turned from the crackling radio, his pulse steady but his mind running through a dozen possible scenarios. Kane Mercer, the blonde mercenary commander, wasn't bluffing. He never had been. The man enjoyed control, and if he'd taken the time to speak directly over the channel, it meant he was close enough to deliver his promise personally. Jax glanced at the brunette female police officer standing near the window, her hair damp from mist, her eyes locked on the distant sound of the helicopter circling above the trees. The German shepherd shifted beside her, tail stiff, gaze fixed on the door. "He's coming here," she said quietly, He already knows exactly where we are." "Then we don't wait for him," Jax replied. He crossed the room, scanning the ranger outpost with a soldier's eye. The place was old but solid, built to withstand storms and time. A narrow stairway led to an upper watch deck, and beneath the main floor he'd found a cellar trapdoor half covered in leaves and dirt. He memorized the layout within seconds. "You can hold from upstairs," he said, loading another magazine into his rifle. "If they breach from below, I'll block them at the front." "And if they hit both at once?" she asked. "Then we improvise." His tone was calm, but his jaw tightened slightly. He'd fought ambushes before, sandstorms, jungle traps, ruined cities, but this was different. The stakes weren't missions or medals anymore. This was survival. The helicopter grew louder. Jax moved to the window, peering through the fog. The dark shape of the craft cut across the clouds, rotor wash bending the trees below. It circled once, then began to descend somewhere to the east, near the clearing. "They'll move in from the ridge," he said. 3, maybe 4 minutes." He turned back toward her. "You ever shot at targets that shoot back?" The brunette police officer gave a faint, humorless smile. "I've been a cop 5 years. I've had worse nights." "Not like this," he said. He handed her an extra magazine. "Keep low. If I say run, you run." "And if I say the same to you?" she asked. He didn't answer. The German shepherd let out a short, tense bark, ears snapping toward the tree line. Jax crouched beside the dog, running a hand over its neck. "Good ears, buddy." The animal looked up at him, breathing fast but silent now, waiting for what came next. Jax's eyes flicked to the corner of the room, where an old generator sat half buried in dust. He moved to it, checked the fuel gauge, and flipped the ignition. The machine coughed, then roared to life, flooding the outpost with faint electric hum. "Why start it now?" the police officer asked. "Noise covers our movement," Jax said. "They'll assume we're trying to power the comms." He grabbed a small oil lantern from the shelf, lit it, and placed it near the window, just visible enough to serve as bait. A minute later, the first muzzle flash came from outside, striking the wood inches from the lantern. "Contact," Jax murmured, dropping low. The police officer ducked beside the wall, her pistol drawn, breathing shallow but controlled. "They're testing range," he said. "They'll flank next." Outside, voices shouted orders. Mercer's men, confident, advancing fast. Jax signaled to the woman, "Upstairs now. Take the dog." She hesitated only long enough to glance at him before grabbing the German shepherd's collar and climbing the narrow steps to the upper deck. Jax waited until she disappeared, then moved to the side window, watching shadows slip between trees. He counted at least 6, 3 on each side. The others were probably circling behind the ridge. He raised his rifle, sighted through the fog, and squeezed off 2 precise shots. One shadow fell, another hit the dirt crawling. The return fire came instantly, rounds shredding the wooden frame around him. Jax ducked, rolled, and fired again. Upstairs, the brunette police officer fired a short burst from the rifle he'd given her. Glass shattered, and a body dropped near the porch. The German shepherd barked once, sharp and fierce. "Nice shot," Jax called up. "Don't get cocky," she shot back. Her voice trembled slightly, but there was grit in it. A round cracked through the window beside her, and she ducked. "They're pushing from the north side." "Hold them there," Jax said, moving to cover the opposite angle. The door exploded inward before he could reach it. Mercer's men using a breaching charge. Jax hit the floor as debris rained down. 3 silhouettes rushed in, shouting, rifles up. He rolled to the left, shot the first one in the leg, then used the falling body as cover to take out the second. The third fired wild, bullets tearing across the ceiling. Jax slammed his shoulder into the man, driving him back into the wall. A headbutt, an elbow to the ribs, a twist, and then the man's body hit the floor, unmoving. Jax wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, glancing up as footsteps thundered overhead. "You good up there?" he called. "Still breathing," came the reply. 2 left outside. "Then keep it that way." He checked the window again, but Mercer was still nowhere in sight. That meant he was waiting. He always waited for the right moment. Jax's instincts screamed it. This wasn't the real assault. It was distraction. "He's not with them," Jax muttered. "What?" the woman shouted back. "Mercer. He's coming another way." He moved fast toward the trapdoor, yanking it open. Cold air rushed up from the cellar. He shined his light down and froze. The old wood planks had been disturbed, muddy footprints leading inward. Someone had already been there. "He's in the outpost," Jax whispered. He turned, scanning the shadows. The German shepherd's growl cut through the air, low and warning. The dog was staring at the far wall near the stairwell. Jax raised his rifle, the barrel tracking slow. Then he saw it, a faint reflection, the gleam of metal under the floorboards. He didn't think. He dove forward, grabbing the police officer and pulling her down as a grenade detonated beneath the stairs. The explosion ripped through the room, shattering windows, sending splinters flying. The German shepherd yelped but stayed upright, guarding them with teeth bared. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking. Jax pushed himself up, ears ringing, vision blurred. "He's here!" the police officer shouted, coughing. Through the haze, a figure stepped from the cellar entrance. Kane Mercer, the blond mercenary commander, calm and smiling despite the destruction around him. His rifle hung loose in his hands as if this was a conversation, not a fight. "You always did have a flair for theatrics," Mercer said. Jax steadied his aim. "You always did have bad timing." Mercer chuckled softly. "You can't protect her, Thorne. You never could protect anyone." Jax's jaw tightened. "Try me." Mercer's smirk didn't fade. "Oh, I intend to." Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, didn't flinch when Kane Mercer, the blond mercenary commander, stepped through the smoke, the red glow of fire behind him, painting his grin in hellish light. The two men stared at each other across the ruined outpost, the air thick with gunpowder and dust. For a moment, neither spoke. The brunette female police officer crouched near the shattered stairwell, gripping her pistol, her eyes flicking between them. The German shepherd stood low beside her, its teeth bared, a low growl vibrating in its throat. Mercer's gaze shifted toward her, almost casually. "You could have walked away. You should have." Jax adjusted his stance, rifle steady, voice calm. "You talk too much." Mercer's grin widened. "You always hated conversation?" His hand twitched, and the next second the room erupted in motion, 2 shots, one from each man, tearing through the air. The recoil slammed through Jax's shoulder as he ducked behind a beam, wood splintering inches from his head. Mercer moved fast, circling through the haze, using the wreckage for cover. Jax shifted position, his movements precise, silent, the way only years of training could carve into a man. The woman fired from the corner, forcing Mercer to duck. The German shepherd lunged, crossing the floor in a blur of muscle and fury, its jaws snapping for Mercer's arm. The mercenary caught it mid-strike, twisting, throwing the animal off, but losing his footing for a split second. Jax seized the moment, charging through the smoke and slamming into him. They hit the floor hard, the rifle clattering away. The fight was close, vicious, brutal. Elbows, fists, knees. Mercer was strong, fast, but Jax was relentless. Every strike came from years of survival instinct, honed in places where mercy didn't exist. Mercer drove a knee into Jax's ribs, then threw a punch that split his lip. Jax countered, slamming his forearm across Mercer's throat, forcing him back against the broken floorboards. Not this time. Pain shot through Jax's arm like electricity, but he didn't release his grip. Instead, he head-butted Mercer square in the nose. Bone crunched, and Mercer fell back, gasping. The German shepherd was already on him again, biting down on his forearm. Mercer screamed, slamming the dog against the wall, but it refused to let go, its eyes wild, protective, unbreakable. The brunette police officer fired once, the bullet grazing Mercer's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Jax rolled to his feet, kicking Mercer's weapon out of reach. His hand reached toward his vest, pulling something small and metallic, a detonator. Jax froze for half a second before realizing what it was. "Don't," he warned. Mercer smiled wider. "The data's not just hers, Thorne. It's everywhere. You think killing me stops it? You're just lighting the fuse." "Then I'll make sure you're not around to watch it burn," Jack said, and fired. The round hit Mercer in the shoulder, throwing him backward against the far wall. The detonator flew from his hand, clattering across the floor. The woman dove, sliding across the debris, grabbing it just before it reached the broken floorboards. "Got it!" she shouted. Jax moved toward Mercer, rifle still aimed. The mercenary slumped against the wall, clutching his shoulder, his breathing ragged. "You think you won?" Mercer hissed. "There's a drive in that helicopter. Everything she found, everything she tried to hide, it's all there. You can kill me, but the second that bird lifts off, it goes global." Jax's eyes narrowed. "Then we stop it from lifting off." Mercer chuckled, the sound half broken. "You're too late. You always are." Jax didn't respond. He turned to the woman, "Grab the dog and get ready to move." She nodded, helping the German shepherd up, her arm steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You're not leaving him alive, are you?" she asked quietly. Jax looked down at Mercer, who met his stare with cold defiance. "No," Jax said simply. But before he could act, a burst of gunfire shredded the wall beside them. More of Mercer's men were pouring in through the broken windows, drawn by the sound of the fight. Jax pulled the woman down, covering her as rounds tore through the air. "Out the back!" he shouted. Smoke and dust filled the room again. The German shepherd barked furiously, snapping at shadows, guiding them through the chaos. Jax fired back, dropping 2 figures in the doorway before slamming his shoulder into the rear exit. It burst open, cold air flooding in. They stumbled into the forest, branches clawing at their faces. The night was alive with noise now, rotors spinning, shouting, distant gunfire. The helicopter loomed above the trees, its lights cutting through the mist like blades. "He wasn't lying," the police officer said, panting. "They're taking off." Jax reloaded, eyes locked on the ridge. "Not yet, they're not." He turned to her, his expression hard but steady. "Get to the tree line and stay low. I'll draw fire." "You'll get killed," she said. "Not tonight." He handed her the detonator. "If I don't make it, you make sure that thing never leaves the ground." She stared at him for a heartbeat too long, then nodded. "Don't take too long," she said, her voice low. "Wouldn't dream of it," Jax replied. He sprinted toward the clearing, rifle raised, cutting through the smoke and rain as tracer rounds streaked past him. The sound of the helicopter grew louder, the engine whining as it began to lift. He dove behind a fallen tree, sighted the pilot through his scope, and fired. The cockpit glass spider-webbed, the machine lurching. One of the mercenaries shouted, trying to regain control. Jax moved closer, his boots sinking into mud, the smell of fuel thick in the air. Behind him, he heard the woman shouting his name, but he didn't turn. The helicopter rose another foot, and then the engine screamed as something ruptured inside. Flames burst from the side, licking up toward the rotor. "That's it," Jax muttered, raising his weapon again. The German shepherd barked behind him, and he felt a strange calm settle over him, the kind that came just before everything went quiet. Mercer's voice echoed faintly from the wreckage behind. "You can't stop it, Thorne." Jax exhaled. "Watch me." Then he pulled the trigger. The gunfire echoed through the clearing as the helicopter spun out of control, flames climbing the fuselage like hungry claws. Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, pressed himself against the wet earth, mud coating his arms and face as he sighted down the rifle again. The rotor screamed overhead, smoke billowing into the trees. The machine wobbled, tilting dangerously to one side. He fired another shot, shattering the side glass, and the craft lurched before crashing down into the ravine with a deafening roar. Heat rolled through the forest, washing over him in waves. The brunette female police officer stumbled from the tree line with the German shepherd at her side, the dog limping but alert, eyes gleaming in the firelight. She shouted something, but Jax couldn't hear her over the explosion. He waved her down and ran to meet her as debris rained from the burning wreck. The smell of fuel and scorched metal filled the air. "You good?" he shouted over the crackle of flame. She nodded, coughing. "I thought you were gone." "Not yet," he said, scanning the wreckage. "Mercer's men are still out there." The dog growled low. ears twitching. Jax followed its gaze and saw movement near the wreck. 2 surviving mercenaries crawling free, weapons still in hand. He moved fast, grabbing the police officer by the arm and pulling her behind a fallen tree. "Down!" he barked. The air erupted again with gunfire. Bullets tore through the bark inches from her head. Jax leaned around the edge and fired twice. One of the mercenaries dropped. The other kept shooting, yelling into a radio clipped to his vest. "They're calling backup," Jax said. "We have to move." "Where?" she asked. "Back up the ridge," he said. "If we reach higher ground, I can cut them off." The German shepherd barked once, signaling it understood the urgency. They began climbing the muddy incline, using roots and rocks for leverage. The sound of gunfire grew fainter behind them, replaced by the crackling of burning wreckage and the distant thunder of storm clouds returning. The forest was darker here, shadows twisting between the trees, fog curling like smoke around their feet. When they reached the top, Jack stopped, raising his hand for silence. The woman crouched beside him, breathing hard. "You think he's dead?" she whispered. "Mercer?" Jack shook his head. "No, men like him don't die that easy." As if summoned by the words, a faint metallic click echoed behind them. Jax spun, pulling the woman down just as a silent shot cut through the air where her head had been. He rolled, firing into the darkness. The flash of a muzzle betrayed Mercer's position. A few yards away, limping but alive, his pale eyes glinting in the light of the burning wreck. "You really should have stayed down," Jax growled. "You always had a flair for the dramatic, Thorne." He fired again. Jax dove behind a boulder, feeling the bullet tear through his sleeve. The police officer returned fire, forcing Mercer to duck. "He's hit!" she shouted. "Not enough," Jack said. The German shepherd lunged from the side, charging straight at Mercer. The mercenary fired twice, but the dog was too fast, crashing into him with a snarl. They tumbled into the mud, the rifle spinning away. Jax moved in, closing the distance. Mercer drew a knife, slashing at the animal, catching its flank. The dog yelped but didn't let go, its jaws locked on Mercer's arm. "Now!" the woman shouted. Jax fired once, the bullet grazing Mercer's leg, knocking him onto his back. He stepped forward, pressing the muzzle of his rifle against Mercer's chest. "You're done," he said. Mercer's hand trembled as he reached for something in his vest pocket, a small black drive. "You still don't get it," he hissed. "This doesn't stop with me. You can burn the files, kill the men, but the data's already mirrored. Every name, every account, every secret you two tried to hide, it's all out there." The brunette police officer stepped forward, lowering her pistol. "Then why fight so hard to stop us?" Mercer's smile was thin and cruel. "Because I was paid to clean up the mess, not erase the truth. And you, officer, were never supposed to find out who's behind it." "Then tell me," she said, voice shaking. "Who?" Mercer's eyes flicked to Jax. "Ask your friend here. He knows." Jax froze, the accusation hanging between them like smoke. "He's lying," he said, but the woman's expression wavered. "You worked with him before?" she asked. "Years ago," Jax said, never taking his eyes off Mercer. "Different war, different orders." Mercer chuckled weakly. "You're done talking." "Am I?" Mercer asked, his hand twitching. Jax fired before he could move again. The shot cracked the night open, echoing through the trees. Mercer went still, his body slumping into the mud. The forest fell silent, except for the whisper of rain. The police officer stood motionless for a moment, staring at the body, then looked at Jax. "You said he was lying," she said softly. "He was," Jax replied, "but there's truth buried in every lie, and now we need to find it." The German shepherd limped to Mercer's side, sniffed once, then turned away, pressing against the woman's leg. She reached down, resting a trembling hand on its head. "What now?" she asked. Jax looked toward the wreckage below, the smoke still rising into the night. "We find that drive," he said, "and we finish what he started." He started down the hill, rifle slung across his shoulder, rain slicking his hair to his forehead. The woman followed, the dog at her side, limping but steady. When they reached the burning helicopter, the heat was still intense, but Jax moved closer, scanning the ground. "There," he said, pointing to a section of debris half buried in the mud. The small black drive had been thrown free by the impact, gleaming faintly in the light. The woman picked it up carefully, wiping away the grime. "This is it?" she asked. "Part of it," Jack said. "He said there were mirrors, copies." "How do we find them?" she asked. "We start with whoever wanted this buried," Jax replied, "and we don't stop until we drag them into the light." The German shepherd whined softly, nudging Jax's boot. He looked down at the animal, then at the woman. "He needs a medic," Jack said. "So do you." "We'll rest when this is done," she said quietly. Jax gave a faint nod. Behind them, thunder rolled again over the mountains, and through the smoke the first hint of dawn began to break. The war wasn't over, not for any of them. Dawn crept through the smoke as Jax Thorne, the Navy SEAL, stood at the edge of the wreckage, his rifle hanging loosely at his side. The fire had died to a low smolder, the heat fading with the night. The forest around them was silent except for the soft hiss of rain against charred metal. The dog winced but stayed still, its dark eyes fixed on her face with quiet trust. Jax knelt beside them, exhaustion settling deep into his bones. He hadn't slept in more than 30 hours, and the adrenaline that had kept him alive was finally starting to ebb. "He's tough," Jack said softly, nodding toward the dog. "He'll make it." The woman looked up, her face streaked with soot and rain. "He saved us back there," she said. "You both did." Jack shook his head. "We got lucky." He looked out across the clearing, where Mercer's body lay motionless among the debris, a shape already fading into the earth. Luck doesn't last long in this line of work. The woman followed his gaze, then held up the black drive she'd pulled from the mud. "You think this is really what he said it was?" "There's only one way to find out," Jax replied. He took the drive, turning it over in his hand. The casing was scorched, cracked along one edge, but the core still looked intact. "If there's data on this, it's encrypted. We'll need someone who can break it." "I know a tech unit in the city," she said. "People I trust." "Then that's where we go," Jack said, standing. His shoulder burned with every movement, but he ignored it. "You can still walk?" "Barely," she admitted, pushing herself up. "But I'm not stopping now." "Good," Jack said. He offered her his hand, helping her to her feet. The German shepherd rose with them, shaking water from its fur, ready again despite the pain. They began the slow climb down from the ridge, the forest waking around them as the sun broke through the haze. Birds called faintly from the treetops as if testing whether the danger had finally passed. When they reached the old ranger road, Jax paused to check the horizon. "We'll find a road crew or ranger patrol within a few miles," he said. "Once we hit the highway, we can get to your people." "You sure Mercer didn't have anyone else?" the woman asked. "If he did, they'll come looking," Jack said. "But not for a while. They'll need time to regroup." Mercer was the one holding the leash. The woman nodded, glancing back at the trail. "You think he was telling the truth? About you knowing something?" Jax hesitated for a moment, then said quietly, "I worked with him once. Black contracts, deniable ops. There were files, intel from inside law enforcement, people selling out their own departments for money and silence. I thought it was buried years ago. Guess I was wrong." The woman's expression softened. "You were trying to stop it back then?" "I was trying to survive," Jack said, "but I learned something out there. Some wars don't end when the shooting stops." They walked in silence for a while. The forest grew thinner, the sound of a distant stream guiding their way. The dog stayed close to the woman, occasionally bumping her leg as if to make sure she was still there. When they reached the river crossing, Jack stopped and crouched, scooping a handful of cold water over his face. The sting of it cleared his head. "You could have left me back there," she said quietly, "after you found us." Jax looked at her. "Would you have done the same?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No." "Then there's your answer," he said, rising again. They continued along the river until the sound of an engine broke the quiet. A ranger jeep, green and weathered, coming down the trail. Jax raised his hand, signaling for it to stop. The driver, an older park ranger with a gray beard, stared at them in shock. "What in God's name happened to you two?" "Plane went down," Jax said flatly. "We need a ride to the nearest station." The ranger looked past them, saw the smoke rising through the trees, and didn't ask more questions. "Get in," he said. They loaded into the back, the dog curling between them, its head resting on the woman's lap. The drive sat between her hands like something fragile and dangerous. As the jeep bumped along the trail, she glanced at Jax. "When we decrypt it," she said, "when we see what's inside, what then?" Jax stared ahead, the forest passing in streaks of green and gold. "Then we do what people like Mercer never could. We tell the truth." "And after that?" she asked. "After that," Jax said, "I disappear again." She smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "You don't seem like the disappearing type." "Everyone disappears eventually," he said. They reached the ranger station an hour later. The building was small, empty except for the hum of old lights and the faint smell of coffee. The ranger called ahead for medical assistance, and soon 2 paramedics arrived, patching the woman's arm and wrapping Jax's shoulder. Through it all, Jax stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the drive resting on the table. When the medics left, the woman sat beside him. "You're not staying for backup, are you?" she said. He shook his head. "You'll have to be the face of this, not me." "You're really going to walk away?" "That's what I do." She looked down at the dog, then back at him. "If this gets out, you'll be hunted." "So what else is new?" he said, smiling faintly. She reached for the drive, closing her hand around it. "I'll make sure it's worth what we lost tonight." "Make sure it's worth what you live for," Jax said. They stood there for a long moment, the silence between them heavy, but not unkind. Finally she spoke. "You never told me your first name." "Jax is short for Jackson," he said. "Yours?" "Aaron," she said softly. "Aaron Cole." He nodded once. "Take care of yourself, Aaron Cole." She gave a small, tired smile. "You too, Jackson Thorne." He turned and walked toward the door, the morning light spilling across the threshold. The German shepherd lifted its head, watching him go, then laid it back down beside Aaron's chair. Outside, the forest was bright again, the storm washed clean. Jax adjusted the strap on his rifle and started down the dirt road, each step carrying him farther from the chaos he'd left behind. The sound of the river faded into the distance, replaced by the low hum of the waking world. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the need to look back. The past had finally burned itself out, and somewhere behind him, amid the ashes, a new day had begun. If this story of courage, sacrifice, and resilience moved you, please share it so others can feel the power of hope too. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate honor, loyalty, and the bond between a warrior and his K9 partner. Which moment struck you the most? Jax Thorne's resolve, Aaron's unyielding spirit, or the courage of their faithful German shepherd? Tell us in the comments below. May this story remind you that even in darkness, compassion and strength can light the way. And if you believe that courage still stands against corruption and fear, write amen in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and may your heart always find the strength to do what's right.